Hello, Bunny Buddies! Welcome to episode 2 of Miracusa's Pool. I'm doing something a little different this time for this video. I recorded all the footage first, and now I'm going to give commentary over it. That way I don't have to worry about multitasking as I draw. There's good and bads to both versions, where either I draw and talk at the same time, like in all of the live streams I do, and then this kind of commentary afterward method. So I'm going to do a little bit of both because that's just how my schedule worked out. So editing magic, I will now move into the corner and you can see the painting in front of you. And now I'm in the little corner like I did before, but I don't have to draw as it happens. So let's go press play and go. So you see my mouse is about to go to the selection brush because I realized everything needs to be on its own separate layer. I've done all this so far on the same layer, pretty much. The only thing that was separate was this character. So I went in with the selection brush you see now. I'm grabbing the selection brush, turning it to 100%, and I'm going to select half of the background that I'm going to separate onto a new layer so that I can keep the depth of this picture. What I mean by that is I want the water, I want to be able to freely paint the water of this pool without worrying about it overlapping the brick, which is the floor, which is more in the foreground. If that makes sense. So basically, the foreground, the stuff that's close to your eye, close to the viewer, the foreground, is overlapping the water. So I'm deciding to take this whole layer of the painting. I'm selecting all the water and everything that's going to be in the background, that's further back. I'm selecting all that. And then I'm going to copy it onto its own layer so that I can then have it behind it. I don't remember how much I show in this footage, but I also did that later on with all the tables and chairs because I realized it's just a lot easier to focus on painting the background and doing all the shadows and doing all the details with the chairs and tables. It's easier when they are on their own layer. Sometimes I fool myself into thinking I can just get away with putting it all on the same layer. And to some extent, I've gotten used to that, but overall, especially on a really big painting, I need to just keep everything on its own layer. So that's why I selected everything here with the selection brush, and my mouse moves off camera, it's copying and pasting onto a new layer, as you see, and then I take the eraser and erase on the old layer. So this isn't anything bad. This is the foreground that's left. And then the pasted is the background you see there. They are now separate. And it means that I can now freely color in on that water without worrying about overlapping the brick that's close to us. And vice versa, I can color on the brick without it worrying about overlapping the water. So this is going to help my painting be a lot easier to work on. And while recording the video, I wanted to show you the layers. So right now below my head, you can see the layers are showing up. I resized the capture footage just so I could show you that the layers below me. Because now you'll see the background has been separated into two pieces. The chair and all of the bricks, the floor that are close to us are now in a higher up layer. And that's going to make things a whole lot easier because I have to do the patterns on that ground. I have to do it's kind of a stone texture where they're giant tiles. And to get that texture right, I don't want to have to worry about a chair that's also on top of it and having to paint around it, because you know how difficult that can be when you've drawn a character, even just, a sheet of paper, you've drawn your character and you want to add a background after the fact. So you try to draw the background around the character, and it's kind of hard to do on some of those spaces, and you don't want it to overlap the character and get messy. So this helps solve the problem. If this were traditional, I'd have to just do the background first and then do the character over it, or be very careful. So I am going to go in and clean up the railing here, which the railing was weird. It technically starts in the foreground as part of the floor, but then it arcs over and goes into the water, so it's technically behind the brick as well. And I went ahead and just kept it as part of the foreground, and I'll have to worry about creating the depth and make the illusion of it going into the water and going further back. I'll have to take care of it that way. Which, you know, there's a lot of, like, if you think of them all as like paper cutouts, that's what I'm having to do. Each layer is its own paper cutout, and I'm keeping them on separate pieces so that it's easier to keep track of and keep it neat. I'm starting to add in the shine colors for this metal. I stayed mostly in the blue colors, because that's usually my favorite for metal. Anything metallic, I like to use blues and greens. And it helps a lot here because the stone, a lot of the ground, is a lot of warm colors, a lot of brown, gold colors, really warm. So to have the metal be a blue and the water itself in the pool is a blue-green, so this helps like all the objects stand out against each other. So all of the colors I'm using for the shading on this railing, as I clean it up, as you can see, I'm going to stick to using lots of just blues, different shades of a bluish gray. Very seldom in a picture do I go for a super bold saturated color. There's usually a bit of, if you look in the little color palette across from my across from the webcam, that color palette, I'm usually somewhere in the middle of that square because I'm trying to add in some gray. It's called making things muted, and that helps a lot of the subtlety. It helps things kind of fade and have variety, especially if you try to get more and more realistic with something or give it a more rustic feel. You want to add more and more grays into the color palette. And then I save lots of bold saturated colors for if it's like a light source, if there's fire or a flashlight, or there's magic going on and I've got someone with a glowing crystal. Then I'll go closer into the bold colors. Otherwise, there tends to be a little bit of gray mixed in with the color. Even with a piece of metal, I don't go true gray either. I make sure it kind of drifts towards one color or another, depending on the environment. So, if this whole picture had a bunch of cool colors, a bunch of blue, then I might be doing the metal in reds, like a reddish gray. And that's my alarm. There we go, my alarm went off. Whoops. But yeah, it all depends on which colors are next to your other objects. So, because the background is lots of warm yellows and golds and browns, I made sure this metal was cooler colors. It helps a lot to make sure objects stand out. And the busier a picture gets, the more you need to be aware of that, because otherwise things can just get really lost and just really muddy. If you want most of the environment to blend together, but you want one object to stand out, you could have that one object's colors be, you know, cooler while the other objects are warmer, and vice versa. You can use effects like that to your advantage. Excuse me. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm still having to kind of shade the stone behind the railing and avoid overlap. So I could technically put every single object on a different layer to really make sure that nothing's getting messy, but it doesn't really help here. I want to still limit the number of layers, because as you see I'm moving on to now, I'm coloring the water on the second layer. The layer that I copied and pasted, now it is on its own layer, and I can color all the water without worrying about that railing, without worrying about the stone, any of that ground. I don't have to worry. I'm just coloring the water freely like this, which helps a lot, because you might have to do a lot of blending effects. And see, now the railing fits right over it and saves me a lot of trouble. And again, I don't know how much I recorded in this bit of footage, but I do that with the rest of the picture too. I take that table and the chair, I take the reclining chair that was off to the side, I start separating all those pieces out, because it's going to save me a lot of trouble later on. Because I'm slowly moving out of the setup phase. This is still a lot of making sure I'm using the right colors and making sure everything's in the right place. So that is it for episode 2. This method definitely helps me keep track of my thoughts a bit better. I don't know which I'll do next time. I'm still continuing the picture, and I did get a lot more done. So when the next time I record this, I'll do another episode. It'll include probably me drawing and talking at the same time, unless you in the comment section suggest that I should continue with this method. If you prefer this, hearing me talk and watch the footage move on its own, we can do that. I'm all for changing things up because I want to. The whole point of these videos is I want to do it in the format that works best for you, so that you can enjoy it the most, understand it the most, and whichever method works best, then I can just focus on that, and it'll save me time. So, thank you all for watching this, and I'll move on to the next video soon. I'm still, with this year, trying to really push for more activity, for posting more stuff for you guys as I work. So, I have a Patreon in the link in the description below, where even for $1, you can enter my art raffle, and I'm also going to be doing a ton of bonus art and sketches as I work on things. And I want to do also private live streams, where I do essentially private lessons for people who pay even just $1 over on Patreon. And you're into an art raffle every week, so there's a lot of content I'm trying to provide extra for any support you can give. And even if you're not able to do anything right now, just leaving me comments to let me know how this video went and what you want to see in the future helps me out a whole lot. And that's it for this episode. My name is PenMark, and thank you all for watching, Bunny Buddies. See you next time!